Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 222 of the Fraternity Foodie podcast. I am your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and a two-time author. Our second book, From Letters to Leaders, Redefining New Member Education and Leveraging Belonging to Eliminate Hazing, is available now. So go and pick up that book today. But we have a second book that you're going to want to pick up while you're there. You can put them in the same cart. We'll get to that in a moment. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie podcast because there's nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, just like our next guest, I learned very early on to trust my team. There are certain blind spots that we have as entrepreneurs that we can't see. That's why we bring on talented people and surround ourselves with people that have different lenses than we do. Your challenge is to do the same thing in your organization, whether that be your fraternity, your sorority, even though we are built as humans to recruit other people that think exactly the way that we think, or maybe they're all from the same hometown. So what I want you to do is find people who are different from you to solve problems even faster as a group. Our next guest is a two-time guest, Natasha Miller, who is not your average CEO. She sits at the helm of Entire Productions, which has been an Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies in America for 3 years in a row. Natasha studied entrepreneurship at the Harvard Business School and MIT, and she is trained as a classical violinist and an accomplished jazz vocalist. She now resides in San Francisco, California, where she is a member and on the regional board of EO, which is Entrepreneurs Organization. Welcome back, Natasha.
Hey, thank you for having me back so soon.
I'll
make it worth it.
Listen, I mean, as soon as I got, this cool box with an advanced copy of your new book, Relentless, I was like, you know what? Natasha has to come back on the show and tell us all about her book, because I couldn't put down the book. I mean, it was one of those straight reads that I had a million and other things to do, but I'm like, I can't stop reading this book. And so I'm blown away. And I want to make sure that our listeners get a chance to hear your just review of the book, your thoughts in writing the book, and just some of the questions that I had as I was reading through it. So the name of the book is Relentless, Homeless Teen to Achieving the Entrepreneur Dream. And you start out with this prelude where we're at this Christmas event. You are 16 years old. Your mom immediately tells you that she is going to kill you and throw you through the window. Now, your dad in the scene, he barely sticks up for you when this happens. And you went upstairs, you decided to call 911, and then you eventually ended up at the Youth Emergency Shelter Service. Mm-hmm. So what made this particular time, this particular event, different for you? Because now you knew that it was time to stick up for yourself. What was different about this time?
The difference was that for the first time, I had sort of permission from a therapist that I had seen that was indicating that I should maybe stick up for myself when my mom, did her antics. That probably wasn't the best advice at the time, because my mom really lost it, right? And I could tell there was a difference in her demeanor and her eyes and her fury. And I thought, well, this is it. Like, if I don't run and call for help, I could end up dead. Oh. It was just a feeling that I had. And I think I was extra scared because when I say I stood up to her, I may have said just like one phrase calmly. I don't remember. I definitely wasn't lippy. You don't do that with a person who's not well. So I made the right decision to call the police for the first time ever.
Definitely did make the right decision. And I'm so happy that you were able to get to a safer place. I also think about other kids, other children that are in similar scenarios, and maybe they don't have the benefit of going to a therapist or a counselor that said, you have permission to stick up for yourself. And maybe, they stay in that dangerous situation because of it. So to me, it's just, oh my God. I mean, you just rocked my world in that prelude. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, thank goodness. Yeah, I mean, it's so intense, and I know you, so I know that you're safe. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, Natasha is safe now. Like she's okay. But then I'm thinking about all the other children that
I know
maybe are in a similar situation, and I'm like, oh, now I start to get stressed out again.
I did put in the back of the book some places that you can call if you need help. What I really wanted to do, and I got stuck, was if you're an adult and you're reading this book and you're harming your children, you're harming your significant other, you're harming someone else, and you know it, and you want to get help, call this number. And then there really isn't something like that. And somebody can read this book and not see themselves in it, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, in the notes in the back of the book, it says, if you are being harmed, need shelter or someone to talk to, please go to covenanthouse.org, nationalsafeplace.org, thehotline.org. So those are some great resources for our listeners to go if they're in that kind of a situation. And, the other thing that really struck me was this wall that you had in your bedroom. And it was one of the places that you said you could express yourself as a kid. Tell us about this wall. Paint the picture. And how was this wall one small victory for you?
This wall, so my bedroom in Des Moines, Iowa, we lived in a little, wasn't that little? We lived in a house where the walls were starting to crumble. And I don't know if it was sheetrock. It was plaster. So I don't know what it was, but it would start to crumble. And I didn't like the way it looked. So I started mixing up, because we didn't have Google then. We couldn't look up what would make spackle. So I started mixing up a concoction of stuff. Like, it was different every time, Play-Doh and flour and water. And I just started, spackling, and it was a different color. So then it started to become ugly / beautiful. And then I started drawing on it and painting, and my brothers would draw on it or write their names. And if I got to have a friend over, which was very rare, they were so elated to put their name on it, right? Because you don't write on the walls. That's not okay. But for some reason, and as you read the book, you can see that, my house was not meticulous. It was kind of a hoarding, garbage, trash, situation. So I don't know if the wall signified to my mother or my dad that was problematic. So I got away with it.
Yeah.
And it was my dream board. I mean, it wasn't really a vision board, but I was able to just write and draw and plaster things. And I felt like a little mad scientist / artist when I was in there.
Yeah, almost like a dream board. It's just interesting that you were able to have that and you viewed that as a victory. And I could see why. I mean, given everything that you went through, that was yours. I mean, that was your place to, kind of draw out whatever it was that you were thinking at the time. So, so interesting to me. And then when you turned 10, you talked about starting to keep a journal. And you said in the book, emotions look different when you get them out of your head. What did you mean by that?
It's a lifesaver, writing down. I think anybody, even if you're, don't wax poetic and write pages and pages like I did, getting your thoughts and your feelings and your frustrations down on paper gives it some sort of a voice, and then gets it out of your head so you're not spiraling on it. Once your brain knows that it's down somewhere, it can let go. Now, did I know that at the time? No, but I knew how it made me feel, which was some relief. And I'm not sure if I ever thought anyone would read them. I certainly hid my journals. I didn't want my family reading them. And I had, if on the website, therelentlessbook.com, I can't give. So if you buy the book, there's a special link that on March 22nd, there'll be some photos and excerpts from my journals and music from the book. And you'll get to see my 10-year-old handwriting and the chaos that I lived in.
Wow, I can't wait to check that out on March 22nd. That's going to be so cool after reading through it. And you're right. I mean, it's so therapeutic just to write stuff down and to get them onto paper. And it's amazing to me that you just did that instinctively. Like nobody necessarily told you to do it, but it made you feel better. And so you did it, right?
And Michael, I'd like to say this, that about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, I wanted to read through the journals again. I didn't do it when I started writing the book because I thought to myself, am I over dramatizing what I think happened to me? Am I making it more than it was? And I was like, I don't want to do that. right? I don't want to tell a lie. A memoir is your recollection of your life history, but I still didn't want to embellish. And when I started reading my journals, I was just bawling because my life was much worse than I had remembered it, which was surprising to me. But now, especially having gone through the last 2 years of the pandemic, you forget, your mind gets to close off some things that cause you harm. And that's why a lot of people that have been abused, that haven't worked through it at a very young age, they end up remembering as an adult, they're triggered by something and they're like, oh my God, it's a real thing. So anyway, I encourage you to start writing in a journal if you're not at any given point.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. That's one thing that I never did as a kid, and I'm kind of jealous. I mean, I wish I could get into my head to understand what I was thinking.
Yeah. There was a lot about boys and crushes and
I'm sure
girls that didn't like me, but there were other very important things.
All the cringeworthy stuff about boys that you had crushes on.
Yeah.
That's so great. And the other thing was, you talked about the power and the miracle of music to lift you out of your circumstances, and you said it was to take you to a higher place. And it so reminds me of the guy who's playing the piano for the refugees that are currently fleeing Ukraine and into Poland on the border. You can hear his music and he plays it as loud as he possibly can. Talk about the influence that music has had on your life.
Listening to music is different for me than playing music, but they're both equally as important. So playing music for me was a refuge, and it was a way to express myself. And now that I'm older, I know that it was actually my version of meditation. So when I would go to the instrument, my violin or the piano, typically I would go to those instruments if I was feeling bad, unless I had to practice, which is a whole different thing. But I would sit there or stand there and play for half hour to 2-3 hours. And it's like a drug. I don't do drugs, but I have a feeling it's like that. It takes you out of everything that you're dealing with, and it throws you into this great like headspace. So thank God that I had that ability and that we had a piano at home. My dad was a pianist, and that I got to figure out how to get free violin lessons and to get a free violin in school. Those things not only helped me mentally and emotionally, but it took me through as a full ride scholarship to college, where I wasn't even being considered as a college potential.
Gosh, I'm so jealous. I mean, honestly, we had the choir when I was growing up in my private school that I went to from first grade through eighth grade, but there was never any instruments there. So I never got access to any kind of instrument whatsoever throughout that process other than our voice. And now, luckily, my kids today, I mean, they love music. I mean, my daughter, she's into the clarinet in the band, and now she's playing the guitar, started with the acoustic guitar, then went to electric guitar, and now the bass guitar. So she's got instruments all over the place.
She's ripping through them all.
She's ripping through them all. Like, one is not good enough for her. And my son plays the trumpet, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, man, I mean, I wish I had that experience. But I'm glad that at least my kids are doing it. And I think it's definitely going to influence them in the future. There's no question about it that it's going to be a part of their lives forever, no matter what. So I just love that. You also took this 12-week online course at Boston's Berklee School of Music on entrepreneurship. And then there's this guy, Professor Chris Stone, who seemed to finally get you to start planning instead of just flying by the seat of your pants, where I think is kind of where you normally go to. So what did you learn from Chris Stone about business success?
Chris gave me an incredible amount of confidence, because he could have sat by and allowed all of us as students to do our work and, say, you did this correctly or whatever, but he was very exuberant about my abilities. Now, was he that way to everyone? I'll never know. It doesn't actually matter. It's just like the violin instructor in fourth grade that said, "You're a natural." Well, I wasn't a natural. You can't tell by one pull of the string, right? You can't tell. And so Chris instilled in me this incredible confidence, and I believed him. I still believe him to this day. but he also gave me this framework in which to apply to my business that I had already had for 9 years. And I was like, oh, like I'd never heard of a SWOT analysis. And would I have survived in the business without knowing that? Probably. But he just gave me a track to go down. And it really did kick off the rebranding and the relaunch of my business. But it really wasn't until later when I did the Goldman Sachs program that my maturity and my mind was ready to click in and just go to the moon.
Yeah, thank goodness for Chris and him seeing that potential in you. And I think that's a lesson for the students that are listening right now. I mean, you really have to show some of the younger students in your organization, maybe an incoming freshman or whatever, what you see in them and what you see for the future in them, because it's your belief in them that's going to make them believe that they can actually do it. They probably didn't think of themselves as leaders, as president of their sorority or president of their fraternity, but you as a leader instilling that confidence in them is everything they need to believe they could actually get away with it, that they could.
Yeah, it's a little bit of rocket fuel to be able to really support someone. It's bigger than you know, and it's bigger. You may find out 20 years later in a book that you really impacted someone.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've seen that, in some of the mentoring that I've done, that they've written books, and then I'm in the back of the book and I'm just like shocked. I'm like, oh my God, like I had no idea that you felt this way. But obviously people remember these things and they carry it with them. And for you, it's Chris Stone, right? I mean, so cool, just so cool. The other thing was, entire productions took off because you let your people help to guide the company's path.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just wondering, how did you learn to trust your team instead of just doing it all yourself so that way things don't get screwed up?
At the time I started letting people do the work and delegating, I hadn't been taught yet as I would be in the future. But there's something that made me realize that this business had more legs than I could make happen individually. And so not only did I start delegating, but I started saying to my employees, if you have an idea, it's your responsibility to let me know, to present it to everyone, because that's going to move us in better directions than if it's just my idea. Now, I am the visionary and I am the leader of the company, but I fully give props and give the if somebody comes up with something, it's their idea. It doesn't then become Natasha's idea. And I think giving people ownership of their ideas and their work, makes them feel great and makes them want to continue to ideate and create new ideas that push the company further. It helps them push themselves further.
Yeah, it's no wonder that you've had tremendous success with entire productions the way that you're leading. I loved every bit of that. The other piece that I found to be so interesting is that you never really thought that success was possible for you. You always felt that you were too damaged, you were too depressed, that nobody would accept you as you are. And all of a sudden you adopted this fake it till you make it attitude. What does that really mean to you, fake it till you make it?
Yeah, fake it till you figure it out really is more of it. Almost like so many jobs I had, as I interviewed at Pacific Digital Image. I don't think this is in the book, as a receptionist when I was pregnant with Bennett. And I got promoted in the interview to a production manager. But this was back in the day when there was pre-press and CMYK presses and you had to do press checks. I didn't know anything about that, nothing. But they saw something in me and I just learned on the job. Like the lingo I could say to you now, no one would understand. I didn't know what they were talking about. And I was shipping ads all over the country. I'm sure some of them didn't make it, but then I became good at it and they trusted me. Same with advertising, same with being a media buyer. I didn't know what to do, but these people saw in me something that they thought was important. And then I just dedicated myself to learning. So learning on the job, I mean, I think it's, learning how to fly the plane when you're flying it or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I've done with almost everything. I'm not someone who waits until I've perfected something then to go out. And it's a blessing.
It
It's a
really is a blessing.
personality situation.
Yeah.
And the people that feel like they need to find perfection before they put themselves out there, I mean, they might be doing themselves a disservice.
They are. I mean, I used to be a web
Unless, of
designer.
course, they're flying a plane.
They are doing themselves a disservice. I used to be a web designer in a former life, and the people that would be my clients, some of them wouldn't want to go live on the website until it was absolutely perfect. But the reality is, like, 2 years went by,
No
and
one
the website
cares.
still wasn't live.
No.
And I'm like, and I literally said to my client, I'm like, you know how much business you've lost out on because you didn't go live with whatever version 1 was? I mean, you can make, my website has been through so many changes over the years, and it's going to continue to evolve every week, every month. I mean, there's always new stuff that's popping up there, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, you're putting yourself out there and saying, this is who I am today. Next week, it might be somebody else, but for today, this is who I am. Do you have a need? And it's just, some people just chase perfection, and they basically lose market share, lose opportunities because somebody else beat them to the punch. It's just
right. And by the way, let's just remind everybody that there is absolutely no such thing as perfect. The perception, like your perception of perfection, could be different than someone else's. And I would just urge you not to do that to yourself.
Yeah, 100%. That's great advice. And listen, everything hasn't been perfect. I mean, you went from a multi-million-dollar company to zero revenue when COVID-19 hit the city of San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, your brain starts telling you on a loop that you're going to be homeless again. And you just have this loop, homeless, 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 homeless. So how do you go from that anxiety in your brain to all of a sudden now implementing new ideas for the business to grow?
I've learned that even though my body and my brain does that fight or flight and the panic attack, which is real for me, it's not, I'm not just saying, oh, I had a panic attack. Like I literally had a panic attack. It feels like a vice is just strangling my chest and back. I get them quite different than some people. And I know now that I need to let it pass, wait it out, take a deep breath, sleep. And then the next day when I've had some refueling, that I now know for sure, because I've had lots of years of experience, that I will be in a better place then to move forward. And so sometimes it's a waiting game. Sometimes it's a couple of hours, it's a day, it's a week, but no longer is it more than that. That's
so good that you know yourself and you know what to do when that hits. So that's really, really helpful. After reading this whole book, I really had to ask this question, and it's in the book. And I think you kind of ponder it to yourself. I mean, do you think that you succeed because of your upbringing and how difficult it was, or is it despite your upbringing?
I don't think I'll ever know the answer to that. There's no way to know. I'm very entrepreneurial. Would I be if I didn't have to fend for myself? No idea. I do know though that the fury and the hatred and the negativity I thought was fueling my success, and that served me very well for quite some time until it didn't. And it took quite a bit of time and therapy and situations to get me over that hump. And now I know for sure that I don't need to rely on that past of negativity to fuel my future success, because I'm actually doing it. And I've been doing it since, I'll tell you when, late July 2019. Good. So I'm so proud of that. That was a huge hurdle that before 2019 of late July, I didn't believe was possible.
Good for you. And you mentioned therapy, which I think is another thing that I discovered late in life that I wish that I would have gone into as, a college student, because, oh my goodness, I mean, they have such good perspective on things, and it does help. Just like you talked about writing down your feelings in a journal, talking about your feelings with somebody else really helps you to sort things out in your head. And I wish I would have discovered therapy, when I was a kid, when I was in college. That would have been a wonderful time for it. It wasn't until later in life that I realized its value. So
Talking to friends and elders and such it's very helpful, but talking to a therapist who's trained to listen and pose potential questions for you. They're not there to solve it all, but they know it can be solved. So they're there to, guide you through. I think it's incredible. It is a luxury, but it's also a necessity. And there are ways to get it if you're not wealthy and you can't pay out of pocket.
Yeah. And college students, you have a counseling center at your university. So you're probably already paying for it in your tuition.
Might as well use it.
Might as well use it, believe me, because it's not cheap once you get out of college. So that's really good. And then one last thing, you did find a shortcut for success. So tell us, what is that shortcut at the end of the book?
Do you want to know what the shortcut is, people? It is, drum roll, please, do the work. You have to do the work. And I'm going to tell you why that's a shortcut. If you don't do the work of learning step by step the foundations of what you want to achieve, you're going to be going in like curled, messy spaghetti. It won't be a straight line. But if you do the work, can you imagine how many years I would have saved had I did the Berklee School of Music program in 2009 if I did it in 2000? Like, it would have been incredible. And doing the work, some people think, oh, what a drag. It's not. It's so exciting to learn and then to be able to figure something out that you've been like stuck on forever and then being able to surpass that. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to do the work.
Yeah, it's doing the work. And I'm going to give you a part 2 to that. It's also finding a mentor. The other piece that you talked about in the book that was so important also was that finding a mentor, finding people who've been there and who've done that and talk to them. So that way you don't repeat all of their mistakes. I mean, for me as an entrepreneur, there's no way I could have been a successful entrepreneur if not for finding a mentor who happened to be the CEO of the company and I was the CFO, but I watched everything that he did. I watched what he did to become successful, setting up a CRM package, all of this stuff they don't teach you in college. And then I didn't repeat all the mistakes that he made. So I had the benefit of watching him, and then he made mistakes. He lost real money. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that. And so it's an education without having any skin in the game. So it was good.
100%. And I think there's a lot of people that tout, make mistakes, make a lot of mistakes. You'll learn from them. That is true. Like, a mistake is great, but if you can avoid it and learn from somebody else in advance, then you can have some other organic mistakes in your future.
100%. That is really good stuff. All right. So if we're coming to your home for a book club night to talk about your new book, Relentless, and you are going to be planning for it with a charcuterie board, I want to know, what are we eating? What's on your board?
Right. Are you asking me or are you asking your listeners?
I'm asking you, Natasha. I want to know what you're eating.
Cola, prosciutto, a little bit of brie and some sharp cheddar. And I don't think I put figs in the book, but there's a whole list of Marcona almonds, honey, and the charcuterie board, fromage et charcuterie.
Oh yes, the Gouda cheese. I mean,
I'm not a big drinker, but I love hot chocolate, so I think I put that in there.
You did. Hot chocolate, wine for the guests, sparkling water, your charcuterie, apples, grapes, strawberries, Marcona almonds, chocolate covered peanuts or almonds. Oh my God, man, oh man, there's some good eating going on at Natasha's place. That's for sure. It's been so much fun. And I love that you wrote the book and we got a chance to talk about your book now, because it's an awesome read. And I know our listeners are going to absolutely love it. So make sure that you go and pick that up today. It's called Relentless, Homeless Teen to Achieving the Entrepreneur Dream. So if our listeners, if they want to learn more about you, your book, or maybe they want to bring you in to speak on their college campus and do an author signing, I mean, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
So my website is official natashamiller.com, and there's a link just to click on book that will take you to the whole book site. And there's actually a lot of bonuses that you can get when you buy a certain number of books, including a course on how to write your own story, your own memoir, and some other fun things. So check it out.
What a cool thing for college students. When they buy in bulk, they're going to get all kinds of free bonuses. I mean, what's not to love? The book is fantastic. Congratulations again, Natasha, on the book. I'm proud to know you. And what can I say? Continued success.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And to our listeners, we hope that you enjoyed this interview. If you did, please like it and share it with other college students. Please go out and pick up Natasha's book. It's called Relentless. And we will see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.